Hello everybody, Just Play Nuts here, and I'm here to start a new series on my channel called Historic Airfields, and this is going to be episode 1. So what we're going to be doing throughout the series, we're going to be, well, Britain is literally littered with historic airfields that have come and gone throughout the decades. But today we're going to start a journey of going to these places, and we're going to be exploring. So we'll explore these airfields and what's left of them, and whilst we're exploring the sites, we'll also be telling the history of these historic airfields. So today is episode 1, and I thought I'd return to a place that sort of inspired me to start this series. And it may not look like it but at the moment, but behind me with all the bushes, but just behind here, behind these bushes and everything, is the place that inspired me to do this, and that is Wisley Airfield. Now I know many of you will be saying you've already done a video on this, but I wanted to make another one because I'm back up here, and I've got more research, more facts and more historical facts about the place. I found out a few more bits about this place as well. So let's go and explore Wisley Airfield. And so we start our exploration here. Now this may look like just some sort of concrete path, but this used to be the entrance to Wisley Airfield. So this is where the workers would have come in and started their days, no matter what they were doing, whether they were flight crew or just worked in the offices, or whether they were ground crew. It's still an entrance today. It's currently being used. If I turn the camera around, as you can see, move over just a little bit, just behind me where the van is going in, this is currently where they're basing loads of equipment for the M25 upgrades. So it's still an entrance for workers, but just not in an aviation capacity. So we're at the entrance, so the airfield is just there. Let's go and explore. So here we are, we've made it. We've now entered Wisley Airfield, and we're in the area, we're in the parking / hangar area. So if I move the camera over here so you can actually see. So this is where we're going to start our story of Wisley and start our exploration. So how we're going to start this is, if I turn around, you can see all of this concrete here, and just over here is, I believe, what may have been an office that was attached to one of the hangars. You can see that if I zoom in here, you can see it's sort of, this is probably a better place to do it, it's slightly raised, so I can only imagine this may have been an office. Now there was 2 sets of hangars here, and 2 ever here at Wisley, and they could house smaller aircraft like BAC 111s, other various aircraft like Viscounts, Vanguards. There was even a special section in one of the hangars for TSR-2, which Vickers played a massive part in during that program. And just remember Vickers, because Vickers will well, it will matter a lot later. I'm trying to find the words, I do apologise people, but what we're going to do now is we are actually stood in one of the hangars. So this is where the smaller hangar would have been. And just to show you, we're right by the hangar doors. If I can find it. Oh, getting caught. Let's have a look, see along here. But whilst we're doing this, you can see the concrete is different there to here. So that's the hangar floor. So that's still there, the hangar floor. And this is what would have been a parking area or taxiway But if we come up here a little bit and we zoom in, you see those rails there along here. So this is where the hangar doors would have been. So we're looking into the hangar, and this is probably like my 15th time up here. I love this place. The imagination just runs wild. But the imagination is showing me, like, I'm looking straight into the hangar and I'm seeing all different types of aircraft being worked on, like the scaffolding and everything above them. It's absolutely amazing. But the one thing, whilst we're here, whilst you can get like a really good view of this, if I turn the camera around, you can see this slope. Now I know a lot of airports and everything, when aircraft are taxiing, they have the odd bumps, but Wisley has that. It has a slope that's going all the way up, so I can't imagine that was easy to taxi up. But we are going to walk that way in a minute. But what we're going to do is we're going to walk up a little bit and give you like a proper sort of look at where the hangars used to be. So if you look behind me, as you can see, this is where they are all based for the M25 upgrades at the moment. So at the moment there's a lot of work going on that M25. But that's not why we're here. We're not here to talk about the M25 or anything. We're here to talk about this. If you look, if you use your imagination and clear all of this away, clear all of that away, and it's quite a massive site. If I move myself and just give you scale of what we're looking at here, it's a massive area. So we've just come from over here. So this is where the smaller hangar was. There was a smaller hangar here, and then over here, so just where like all these pipes and the dirt is, there would have been parking areas around here, where, and the entrance is just over there somewhere where all the workers would have come in. This is where the bigger hangar would have been, and in that hangar you could house 2 VC-10s, and we know that VC-10s aren't exactly the smallest things on the planet. So that is the first part of Wisley. So this is where the hangars would have been. This is where aircraft would have been parked and taxied from. Now we're going to go and start building up a bit of excitement. So we're going to head off down this way. We're going to head off back down that way, and we're going to explore a bit more. And now the video starts to get exciting. Just to give a little bit more history and a bit more to the video, behind me here, actually where the sun's there, is, well, I can only assume was a road, because just over there, and we'll go over there later on in the video, was the control tower and some offices. So the entrance is all the way back over there. I don't know if you can see it, there's sort of like some white and red sort of like poles just over there. The entrance is just over there. So I can imagine if you were flight crew, or you were anything to do with airside, you would, I don't know, park your cars up here or walk in here and then go about your day and do whatever you needed to do throughout the day, whether that be, as I said, flight testing or maintenance or ground crew or office work. But because there were offices on the other side, that road there is possibly where those workers used to, I don't know, either walk or drive across to their offices. And obviously air traffic controllers had to get over there somehow, because I can't imagine people would take too kindly to people running across an active runway at the time. So that's a nice little piece of history. But now we're going to go and explore a bit more. And here we are. We've taxied up from the hangars, which is just behind the camera, just over there. And you can, I don't know if you can see behind me, I'll give you a clearer view. You can see there's still yellow markings from when this place was an active airfield. And I do love that because Wisley has been closed for 50 years in 2024. And it's just amazing to see that even though, you know, it's been abandoned for that long, it closed that long ago, that there's still a lot of like reminders of what used to be here. But this is what I find sort of eerie and also fascinating about these historic airfields. And I first thought of this when I went to Tangmere for the first time as a teenager, that it's so eerie and strange. Like, you come to an old airfield which used to be a hive of activity, and we know that even with today, like whether it's commercial or military aircraft, that airfields are not the quietest places in the world. So just to hear what this, it's absolutely incredible. Now, this was during a time, this place was open during a time of aircraft that were very, very noisy. So you're talking about aircraft like the BAC 111, the VC-10, the Hawker Siddeley Trident, Vickers Viscounts, Vanguard. Again, remember the name Vickers because it has a role to play in this video, and we'll get to that shortly. But we are also about to enter this area. So there's one here, and there is also one up there. So before I go into what they are, we're going to taxi up a little bit more to this area, and then when we get there, I'll tell you exactly what they were. So we've taxied up a little bit more, and not far too much, because just over there, so as you can see, if I can get the camera to focus, there we go. That, if I move up a bit closer, you can just see sort of the beginning of it here. This area here was an engine test bay or engine detuner bay. I don't know if they had them here, but there are videos of specifically the VC-10 being tested, and I can sort of show you now. Look, it's a huge mass of concrete, and this was one of them. So there's a couple more literally just behind this bush here, and they were specifically for, as it's pretty self-explanatory, tuning engines. And you know, maybe they think the engines were producing too much thrust, so they would tune them down a little bit. They weren't doing this, they weren't doing that, so let's tune them and get them to do what they want to do. Now, to finish what I was saying, I don't know specifically if they were here, but there's videos of, as I said, specifically the VC-10, where they had like these massive, I think they're like, I can only call them trumpets, like massive trumpets that would have stood somewhere like probably over there if they had them here. And they would they would tow the aircraft up from where the hangars are, and they would bring them up here, and they would face the engines into these funnels, and then they would whack the engines up to full throttle and do bits and bobs to get the engines to perform how they were built and intended to perform. So that is one last little look. I've got the sun in my eye, always good. That is the engine detuning bay, and now we're going to taxi up a little bit more, and this is going to be the most exciting part of the video, I think. And here we are. So this is the holding point at Wisley Airfield. Now, for those of you who aren't like into aviation, or oh, actually I've just discovered this, there's a little bit of a taxiway line there, so right on the centre line for what we're about to taxi onto. So a holding point is for those who aren't like into aviation or don't know, or if you are and you don't know what it is, basically it's a point in which a taxiing aircraft that is coming out to, say, the runway will hold if there's like another aircraft on the runway, or they're just waiting for permission to take off. And that is what we're going to be, that's what we're taxiing onto right now, because right there in front of us is the runway here at Wisley. Now, Wisley is was a very small airfield. It only ever had, like, there's only two taxiways here. There was only 2 hangars, and there was only 1 runway. And it's just because of the area that it's in. Like, I urge anyone to come down here and have an explore of this place, because it's absolutely incredible. Because, as I said, it's kind of like silent. This place used to be a hive of activity, and it's fallen silent, which is just, it's fascinating but eerie and quite creepy at the same time. And so here we are, the runway here at Wisley. You can see it's quite wide, and it had to be because of the aircraft that it was accommodating during its entirety of its existence. So down that way is runway 10, and then down this way is runway 28. So we're gonna backtrack to runway 28 first, because there's a fair few things to see down there, and then we're going to eventually walk back up, backtrack runway 28 and taxi back to runway 10. So let's go. And so here we are, guys, the centre line of the runway here at Wisley. As you can see from that and this, the markings are still here, and I find that incredible after 50 years of this, since this place closed, that they're still here. It's absolutely incredible. But one of the other things I do find incredible is, if I turn the camera around, you can see sort of like what I can only say is sort of like an underlayer from the runway, and then you come over here and you see this black mass here and how it sort of climbs up a little bit there. That is part of Wisley's runway. So this is the top layer. So this is what the aircraft would have actually been on, and it's amazing to be stood here. I can only imagine that maybe, as I said, this is probably like to reinforce like the upper surface, so that when the aircraft touched down, they could stand the weight and the you know, the stress of aircraft touching down and taking off, you know, because obviously you've got the thrust from the engines, which aren't exactly like weak things, and then you've also got the weight of the aircraft touching down. We are going to get to the story of Wisley Airfield in a moment, but I want to tell a personal story of how I discovered this place. So it's back end of 2022, October 2022, and I am giving a lift to someone to Stansted Airport. Now, on the way up there, before coming off and driving down the M25, I saw on Google Maps, I just happened to notice that something that looked like a runway. So when I got home, I said to my mum's husband that you know, there's this, well, I can only assume is an airfield as you come off the M25, and he said that it was Wisley Airfield. And so I googled this place and found out a load about its history, and thought that this is a place that I definitely have to come and explore. So my first time up here was actually in January of 2023. I was driving back from Duxford, and I was about to come off back down the A3, and I said, "Hey Google, how far away is Wisley Airfield?" And it was a 5-minute drive. So I parked up somewhere. I parked up as close as I could, and this railing here is actually the path that I was on back in January of 2023 when I first came up here and I didn't have a look around. I just came up and came up the path and stood on the runway for a bit and had a look up and down, and then eventually I decided that it was time to come and have a proper explore, and so I did. I have walked this runway many times. I've been around this place. I've explored pretty much every single part of this historic place, and I just love coming up here. Sometimes I'll even come up here if I'm feeling a bit stressed, but we're not here for that. We're not here for stress. We're here for a story. We're here to, you know, tell the story of this, I want to say, unknown little airfield. This airfield that played sort of a crucial part in Britain's aviation history. So why don't we start the story? Let's start the story of Wisley Airfield. So let's start the story of Wisley Airfield, and in order to do that we have to go all the way back to 1942, and we start our story with a man called Joseph Summers. Now, anyone who knows Joseph Summers will know that he is the man who first flew the Spitfire on its very first flight. But during the war he was a test pilot for Vickers. Now, during that year he was flying from Weybridge / Brooklands, as it's known today, which is literally 20 minutes down the road from here, and he was flying, which I can only assume was a Wellington bomber. During his flight he had an engine failure and he crash landed in a field. This field here, this very field that you see behind me, and he survived. He had a brilliant crash landing, because any landing you can walk away from is a good one, and he had a quick look around at the place, and then when he got back to Vickers he said to the higher ups that the field that I crash landed in I think might be suitable as an airfield. Now, this was World War II, so you needed pretty much as many airfields as you possibly could, otherwise, you know, if you stood still with what you had, they were going to get bombed. So some people from Vickers, they came, they surveyed the site, and they came to the same conclusion. And so in 1942, two hangars were erected in that area, and Wisley Airfield was opened. But what was Wisley opened for? You know, what was its purpose? It was a testing facility. It was a dispersal site during the war for Wellington bombers. So freshly built Wellington bombers built at Brooklands would come here, they would land here in what was, well, as I said, a field, but it was all sort of like mown down. Some runway markings were sort of spray painted onto the ground, and that was Wisley's runway. Well, the dispersal part, what is a dispersal? So the Wellington bombers would fly from Brooklands to here and carry out further test flights. This is where they would then be dispersed to their bases, their squadrons, so the crews of that squadron from that base would come and pick the Wellington bombers up from here and then fly off to wherever they were stationed. But that's pretty much what Wisley was for. That's what it was mainly used for during its years when it was open as an active airfield. So it was always sort of agreed that if Wisley was to ever close, that the land would then be turned back over into agricultural use. If it was deemed it wasn't in need anymore. So after the war, what happened to Wisley? Did it close? Did it stay open? It stayed open. It became Vickers Airfield. So this was their airfield for testing and manufacturing of aircraft, and I think one of the first aircraft that were manufactured here was a Vickers Viking. Now, the Vickers Viking, there's one on display at the Brooklands Museum, not too far away from here, and it is a twin-engined small airliner. Well, during the war, jet engines were becoming a thing. So in the early 1950s, or to be exact 1952, because the needs of aircraft had changed. You know, jet aircraft couldn't really use grass runways. Well, they could, but it was deemed that tarmac runways were the way forward. So in 1952, this runway was laid to bear in 1952, and this is the location, this is the very place in which Vickers' first jet bomber, the Vickers Valiant, made its first flight. And anything to do with the V-bombers, I'm all for, because the Vulcan is my overall favourite aircraft. I love it, and anything to do with the V-bombers is just a must for me. So to be here and be where the Valiant made its first flight is absolutely incredible. And again, the imagination's running wild, because I'm picturing the Valiant coming from that end of the runway and taking off down that way. Before I end this clip though, I am going to say that one of the times I came up here it was sunset, and I just had this image in my head, especially looking down towards runway 10, where there were silhouettes of 111s and VC10s coming into land here. I do love this place. But yes, so this is where the Valiant made its first flight. This was also the place where the Valiant B Mark II was also flown from. That aircraft was sadly ill-fated, as during the Cold War the V-bomb's role changed from sort of like high-level bombing to low-level bombing, and the Valiant could simply not cope with the stresses of low-level flight, so they were quickly retired in 1965, and the Valiant Mark II never entered service. But both those types, the Valiant Mark I and Mark II, they have been here at Wisley. Just absolutely amazing. And here we are, we have backtracked all the way to runway 28, and you can see the keyboards are still here, and so is actually the runway numbers. There's the 2, and just over there is the 8, and there's more keyboards over here. But we're going to start off on this clip with this little, well, I say little area, this area here, this massive concrete, which you can see if I zoom in, as you can see, it sort of goes out a little bit into the grass, and then it comes all the way around here and back to the runway. So what would this have been for? Well, this would have been for the aircraft that were taking off from runway 28 or 28, because as I said, Wisley is a very small airfield. It wasn't massive like, say, Boscombe Down or other testing facilities, especially like Woodford. But aircraft that were taxiing up from the hangars over that way, they would have, if they were taking off from this way, they would have come down here, and when they get down here, they would use this area here to turn around, and then they would then take off down runway 28. Then obviously if aircraft were taking off from runway 10, there is a taxiway down there, so they would have just taxied straight onto the runway and taken off straight over our heads. So as I said, this is runway 28, and again, I know I've said this many times throughout the video, but I find it amazing that after 50 years there's still bits and bobs here to remind you that there was an airfield here, something used to be going on here. We're going to be staying up here at the runway 28 end, and we're going to just head down this path here, and we're going to explore a couple more things before we taxi back down runway 2, or backtrack, sorry, down runway 28, down to the other end of the runway, and it's having some more exploring. And this is the next stop on the story of this airfield, and again, it's another slab of concrete, and I know you may be thinking, is this another turnaround point? It possibly could have been. It could have possibly been used for that during its time as an active airfield, but this is actually the compass point. So you can see it's quite, not as large as the end of runway 28, but you can see it's quite a large mass of concrete. So what this area would have been used for when Wisley was open is, as I said, it's a compass point. So aircraft would have been towed down here, and they would have been towed around in a circle, or they would have been put in various positions on this slab to calibrate the compass in the cockpit, to make sure, you know, obviously when you're flying, the compass is pointing the right way rather than taking you in a completely different direction to where you want to go. So that's what they would have done. And I'll say, I think there's still sort of like these markings here, there's still so much like still here. Whilst we're here as well, that thing over there I think is either I can never get this right, a VOR or AOR, and it hasn't been here since Wisley was opened, although I might be wrong about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But basically, it's used to sort of guide aircraft into Heathrow, or help with guidance into Heathrow. Excuse me. And I'll say that's been, I don't know how long it's been there for, and I don't think it was part of Wisley when it was an active airfield. But that's what it's for, and it's also the only active part of Wisley today. Everything else is gone. It's, you know, you can literally Google Wisley Airfield and you can come across all sorts of photos, and you know, there may even be a video of aircraft landing here. But yeah, everything from this place is gone. But I mentioned Heathrow. That also has a pivotal part in this story, but that will come in at the end of the video. So the next stop on our adventure here at Wisley is this. This is the only remaining building here at Wisley, the only one. Everything else has been taken down. The control tower, the offices, the hangars, everything, it's all been taken away apart from this place. Now, in my previous video, I said that this may have been a security box. This may have been where security checked in, like the workers and everything. I can only feel that maybe there was something here, like some kind of road, because there's these pavements here, and there's this road going all the way down there. But then again, this may have been put in place, I don't know, afterwards, because I have followed this road and it does lead to that VOR AOR thing over there. So maybe it's just been sort of put in here to give easier access to maintenance for that thing. But this is, I mean, sadly it's been graffitied on, but this is the substation. This is the only building remaining here at Wisley. And if we go inside, you'll see that, I mean, look at this. Look at this. All the original stuff is here. All of it. Absolutely amazing. It's like a time machine, if you will. It's absolutely amazing. I can't really stay in there very long because it does stink, but this is where the Airfields electrics and everything would have been controlled from. And this is it. This is the only building left here at Wisley. It's just a shame that maybe, I mean, hopefully it can be saved and maybe turned into something, but we'll see. So if you're, just to add a bit to the video, if you're wondering what these are, these mounds of earth and these barriers, why are they here? It's because when Wisley closed and everything was taken down, like the hangars and all the other buildings, it was never sort of like, it wasn't dug up, it wasn't developed. I mean, there is a farm over there, but I think that's been there since even the airfield was opened. But when it closed, it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't dug up like, say, RF Binbrook, for instance. That was, you know, the runway and taxiways were all dug up. It remained open land. I mean, before you could literally, before that, all the M25 works were there, you could literally just drive onto this place and drive up and down the runway if you wanted to. The entrance that we were at the beginning of the video, you can, as I said beforehand, you could come off the A3, drive down that entrance path and literally just drive straight onto the airfield. But that's what they're there for, because people were going up and down the runway here with their motorbikes and whatnot, and let's just say there was a few accidents that didn't end too well, let's just say that. But if we go back to Wisley itself, so we've told the story of the beginning, and as I said, it was a testing facility. This place was owned by Vickers. It was their own airfield, kind of like Avro with Woodford, if you will, and the Royal Aircraft Establishment with like Farnborough and Boscombe Down and various other sites. And it was called Wisley Airfield throughout pretty much nearly its entirety until 1969, when it was briefly known as RAF Wisley. Now, why did this happen? What was the need for this brief name change? Well, the Daily Mail used to have something called the Transatlantic Air Race, and Britain's participant that year was a Royal Navy F4 Phantom, which flew from New York to here in, I think it was a record time, but basically this is where it landed. It landed here. So even a Phantom has been here at Wisley. Now, that specific Phantom, I think after doing some research, was scrapped, but there is a part of it that remains at the Fleet Air Arm Museum in Yeovilton, and that is its tyre. So the tyre that is, I think it's in the reserve collection at the moment. It's not in the carrier experience like it used to be. When the Phantom touched down here, it burst. It basically, the tyre blew up, or punctured actually. The tyre punctured, and that tyre is still in the collection of the Fleet Air Arm Museum. So there's another bit of Wisley here. There's another bit of Wisley out there on display, and you know, another story to add to Wisley. So we have come to nearly about 3/4 lengths down runway 10, and the reason why is because if I turn around here, it may not look like it now, but if we walk in just a little bit further, this was the location of the offices / control tower. Now, Wisley's control tower was not something like some sort of tall, squared, like UFO looking thing. No, it was quite literally a converted house. They just converted a house into a control tower and called it, and that was Wisley's control tower, as far as I'm aware, for its entirety of its opening. But this is where they would have been. You can see that some of the land is still quite flat, and actually if we zoom in over there, you can see that how there's a little bit of ground there somewhere just over there where it sort of stops and then goes straight 90 degrees. So that, from the images I've seen, that is where the offices would have been. I think the control tower would have been around here somewhere, and as I said, it was just literally a house. It was a wooden house, and you can even find images of this on Google. But one of the most fascinating images I've seen taken from that control tower, as we're going to continue our journey back down runway 10, if I get the camera this way so the sun's not there. So one of the most fascinating photos, and in fact probably one of my favourite photos from Wisley, there's quite a few, but probably my most favourite is there is a photo of the prototype, the very first VC-10 landing here all the way back, I think it was in 1964, I think that the VC-10 first flew, and there's a photo of it being taken from the top of the convert house / control tower, and it is literally about to land here at the end of runway 10 as we're making our way down. There's a few other images as well, like where the hangars are. In between the hangars were parking areas for aircraft, and there's two VC-10s and the very first BAC 111, which is also going to be a part of Wisley's story, and that story is going to be coming up quite soon. But we're going to continue backtracking towards runway 10 now, and we'll see what's down there. And we've made it to runway 10. So we've backtracked, we've been up both ends of this not incredibly long runway, but it's long enough for a person and it's long enough for aircraft to take off. So whilst we're down here, we are going to have a bit more as an explorer, of course, but this, as you can see, this is the second taxiway to Wisley, and it does go all the way back down there towards where the hangars were, and there is another bit that's up there. But what we're going to do first is we're going to go down that taxiway, because whilst I was up here and recording a video, and that's why it's taken so long to get this video out, because I just come across more and more stuff on the internet, and even watching other YouTubers, you know, where they've dug up information that I haven't been able to find, and you know, it's all come from the internet and other YouTubers. So before we start exploring, you know, these last two taxiways, as you can see, this one, but whilst we are here on this one, as I said, it does go off that way as well. So I can only assume that maybe this taxiway that we're on was for smaller aircraft, because it wasn't just Vickers types that were tested here, because obviously eventually the aircraft manufacturers of Britain realised that, you know what, we can't really financially do it on our own anymore. So they all sort of merged, and one of the most notable ones was the British Aircraft Corporation. And so eventually, you know, other aircraft types were tested here. There's photos of de Havilland Doves here. I'm sure there's probably photos out there of Viscounts and Vanguards and other types of aircraft that flew here. And BAC 111s, probably the two most famous types that flew from here, is the BAC 111 and VC10, and also the Valiant as well. But that, you can see taxiway goes back up there, and if we come round a little bit more, we are back to where the hangars were. So whilst we've got the camera point down there, so again, if aircraft were taken off from runway 28, they would go up that way, backtrack down the runway all the way to that end, turn off, and then off they'd go into what is a lovely day today. And if they were taken off from runway 10, again, from the hangars up here, if you were a smaller aircraft, you'd probably go up there and line up, but if you're a bigger aircraft like a VC10 or 111, you'd go up there and taxi around, and off you go. But again, before we go on to runway 10, I need to find it first, but there is another part of Wisley that I need to show you guys before we go and explore runway 10. So we come to this bit which comes off of the taxiway here, and then there's this bit of dirt or hill, small hill, that we're going to quickly climb over. There we go. And as you can see, there's like this road in all of these bushes, and that's one of the new roads over there that they are constructing around Wisley. But we'll get to that like pretty much at the end of the video, because basically I don't know how much longer this place has left, but they seem to have cut this area down. When I was last up here, this was all covered in bushes, but they seem to have cut it down quite a bit. But they have as well. You can see all of that. So it's probably not visible now, but there's a drain, and you can see there's a pavement there. And when I was last up here, which was about a couple of weeks ago, where all these bushes and everything is now, there is actually a road under that. There's like a road, so I can only imagine that maybe there was another road that went towards the hangars, and this was another way of the workers getting around the site. Because as I said, I urge anyone, if you're ever in Surrey or near Surrey, to come and have a look at this place, because it is absolutely fascinating, especially if you're like myself, an av geek, where, you know, this place provides such a unique opportunity to walk up and down a runway. I mean, where else in the world are you going to get that opportunity? And I know there are other places, but that amount of access and able to just walk up and down, you know, what used to be an active runway is incredible. But we've come down this little path here, and we find this. And as you can see up there, we're going to make our way onto it. Now, I mentioned the AOR or VOR up at the other end of runway 28, but this bit of concrete here is possibly where Wisley's radar / VOR AOR may have been. But I do want to say that it was probably radar, because I mean, it's quite a round piece of concrete, and then we come over here, that's possibly a step, but then this bit of concrete does go round sort of that way, and you can see it's been buried by the work that they're doing here. And there's a path that goes off down that way, but it looks a bit cut off, and then there's more round here. So maybe this could have been where Wisley's radar / VOR AOR could have been. And I only recently found this. I was on an Explore one day, and I saw that bit of concrete that was leaning off the taxiway, and thought, I wonder if that leads anywhere. I climbed over that mound of dirt, and I found this, and I just wondered what it was. And I remember watching a YouTube video of I can't remember their name, but they had they made some drone footage of this place, and they came across this bit, and they said that, and that's where I got the information that this maybe could have been the location of the Airfields radar. But it's just incredible to know that there was so much going on at this place. Right, so we're going to head back now to runway 10, and that's when our next story is going to come up. And here we are, we have reached the end of runway 10. I just need to find something, guys, because along here somewhere is the centre line for the taxiway up at this end of the runway, and I just need to find it. I do apologise, guys, because it seems that nature is doing all it can to take back over this place. Let me just see. It is around here somewhere, guys. I'm not just showing you earth or rubble. Here we go. So I can imagine the taxiway would have gone out there, like just probably to the end of those bushes there, and nature has just sort of taken over, has just been trying to take back over. But here we are, and this is the end of runway 10. So the keyboards and the runway number is over there, but you can see down this end of the runway, it doesn't look wide enough for an aircraft to turn around, but I mean, possibly smaller aircraft could have done it. But it looks like something that most RAF bases have, but they have that sort of like sandy colour part of the runway first before you get onto the black stuff. So maybe that's just the way it was built. I don't know. And here we are, guys. This is it. So there's the keyboards, and if we come over here a little bit, there's the one, and you can just make out over here the 0. So this is runway 10, and before I carry on, you can see there's more taxiway markings here, so the aircraft would have lined up and gone off to conduct test flights. Well, this is where the story of Wisley sort of takes, I say sort of, takes a tragic twist, because from this very runway, on the 22nd of October 1962, the very first BAC 111 took off from here for the last time. And as I said, in the latter years of Wisley, throughout Wisley's entirety, it was used as a testing facility. And obviously Vickers eventually in the 60s merged into, well, I think they were still their own company, but other manufacturers started test flying aircraft from here, and one of them was the BAC 111. So the 111s were built at Herne Airfield, now known as Bournemouth International Airport. They were built all the way down there, but the very first was flown into here to conduct further flight trials. Well, on the 22nd of October 1962, that aircraft took off from here, this very runway here, to conduct stall tests, so basically to find the limitations of the aircraft. Well, sadly, one stall test that they did resulted in the loss of all 7 men on board, and the aircraft literally fell into the ground straight tail first, like that. So it's very sort of, I don't know whether to say amazing or eerie, or I don't know how to feel about being stood where that aircraft took off for the very last time, and where those 7 crew took off from the very last time. And but it was some good came out of it, because they most modern aircraft, if they get close to their stall speed before they even get there, the control panel shakes, and that was tested on the 111. I think it was first introduced on the BAC 111. And if you look down that runway, just look down it, that 111 was here and took off for the very last time. And I can see it now, like just speeding down the runway with the plumes of smoke that the 111s used to produce, and just disappearing off into the distance, never returned. There is a story that some of the workers had come back from, I think they were staying here, they'd come back from a night out, and they were told to keep quiet because of obviously what happened. So we've done it. We've explored every part of Wisley Airfield. We've been all the way up to runway 28. We've seen the last remaining building on the site. We've seen the turnaround at runway 28. We've seen the compass point. We've seen where the radar used to be, the AOR, the taxiways, where the hangars used to be, and now we stand here on the end of runway 10. So, as I said, Wisley opened in 1942, but when did it close? Wisley closed in 1974, so this place has been like this for 50 years. So what happened to Wisley? Why is it now just an abandoned airfield near Surrey? Well, the story of Wisley's wind down sort of starts with the VC-10. The VC-10 was the biggest aircraft to land and take off from here, and truth be told, that there was no room for development. There was no way that Vickers could expand the site. If you ever come here, you'll see exactly why. There was no room for expansion. There was no way they could extend the runway, build more hangars here. There just wasn't enough. So that's reason one. Basically, aircraft were becoming too big for Wisley to accommodate, and there was no way to expand. Reason two, and I don't know if you may have heard this throughout the entirety of the video, but there have been planes from Heathrow coming and going, consistently going over. That was factor two. We are very, very close to Heathrow Airport here, and obviously if you've got aircraft that have just taken off from Heathrow and then you've got another aircraft taking off from here, it's not ideal. So that was another factor. That was factor two in Wisley's closure. Wisley's last hurrah was that transatlantic air race in 1969 with the Phantom touching down here, but at this point the final nail in the coffin had already been put in. Wisley was deemed to be closed, and the wind down of Wisley started in 1968, and flying actually stopped here in 1972, and the last aircraft to take off from here was a Piper P-828, so nothing like a VC-10 or 111 or anything like massive. It was a general aviation aircraft. The site remained occupied until 1974 before eventually it closed altogether. But this is what's fascinating about Wisley, is that whilst other airfields have had taxiways, runways all dug up, and so let's take RAF Binbrook as an example, where the taxiways and the runways have been dug up. The hangars remain, and they're used for businesses now. They're used for companies. Wisley, that didn't happen to Wisley. Wisley had all of its buildings taken down, apart from the building down the end of the runway. I forgot what it was called, and but everything else remained. The parking areas where the hangars used to be, the runway, of course, the taxiways, it's all still here. But yeah, Wisley was only open for just over 3 decades, from 1942 to 1974. It's sad, really, because whenever I come up here, as I said earlier in the video, the imagination runs wild, because as I look out there, I look out in the sky up there, and I look down here, like when I look this way, I see silhouettes of VC-10s and other aircraft coming into land. And when I look down that way, I see 111s and VC-10s taking off, leaving their smoke trails behind. But that's just what I find eerie about this place and amazing, is that this place used to be a hive of activity, and now it's fallen silent. It's unbelievable. There used to be hundreds of people here and loads of aircraft taking off and landing here, and it's just absolutely incredible. So we come back to the present day. It's 2024, and what is the future of Wisley? You know, is it going to just be this abandoned airfield in Surrey for the rest of its days before nature eventually takes over? If only. That would give us probably a lot more time for people to actually come down and explore this place, but sadly, no. The future of Wisley Airfield looks quite bleak, and doesn't look certain, because this whole entire site, everything you see before me, is owned by a company called Taylor and Wimpey, and they are a housing development company, and their plan for this place is to build 1,700 new homes here. That's 1,700 homes, all here. They want to have a country park, or sort of like a country park area over where the hangars used to be, but everything else will be turned into housing. Around this area, there's loads of houses, there's loads of people who have moved out of the city to come live in the countryside, and they've been fighting for so long to say, no, we don't want this town, which is understandable. You don't want to move to the city to suddenly have another one built right on your doorstep. But the thing is that they've been fighting for so long, but on the 24th of May of this year, planning permission was granted for Taylor and Wimpey to begin building on Wisley Airfield. So sadly, it looks like this is the end of Wisley. So as I said, guys, before I end the video, if you are an av geek or just looking for somewhere new, if you're nearby to walk your dog or wherever, or just fancy a peaceful walk somewhere, this is an incredible place to do it, because as I said, someone like myself, the imagination runs wild, and you know, hopefully if you're not an av geek, you see this video, you know, maybe you'll come up here and after watching this and think, oh my god, you know, this used to happen. My imagination's running wild. I really hope so. But guys, as I said, I really urge all of you to get up here and have a look around. It's absolutely amazing, and it's, especially on a day like today, it is a lovely walk. So this is where I'm going to end the video, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to my channel, it really helps a lot. And until next time, from this series, Historic Airfields. This has been Historic Airfields episode 1, Wisley Airfield. See you in episode 2.